Hello friends, happy Monday. I just dropped Jack off at the vet, so we're a little bit late today, but we have not read in a couple days, so I thought that I would hop on and try to get that done. So we are in Judges. Like I said, it's Monday. I can't believe it's Monday again. The kids are back. We're starting to decorate for Christmas, and Jack is going to the vet today. When I got there, they weighed him. He is 91 pounds. 6 months old, 91 pounds. He's a big boy. So we are not going to have any cameos from Jack today, but we are going to try to get through a couple chapters so I can keep putting up Christmas decorations. I love Christmas decorations, so we are starting to do that, and it's very exciting to me. So, all right, we're going to read in Judges chapter 6 if you want to read along. If not, I will be reading to you. And last time we read some really interesting stories, so I cannot wait to hear what else happens in Judges. Last time we had a king that got killed on the potty, and a guy who got a tent peg through his head, so we'll see what happens today. Again, the Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites were so cruel that the Israelites fled to the mountains, where they made hiding places for themselves in caves and dens. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, marauders from Midian, Abimelech, and the people of the east would attack Israel, camping in the land and destroying the crops as far away as Gaza. They left the Israelites with nothing to eat, taking all the sheep, oxen, and donkeys. These enemy hordes, coming with their cattle and tents as thick as locusts, arrived on droves of camels too numerous to count. And they stayed until the land was stripped bare, so Israel was reduced to starvation by the Midianites. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. When they cried out to the Lord because of Midian, the Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites. He said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you out of slavery in Egypt and rescued you from the Egyptians and from all who oppressed you. I drove out your enemies and gave you their land. I told you, I am the Lord your God. You must not worship the God of the Amorites in whose land you now live. But you did not listen to me." And then the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath an oak tree at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash in the clan of Abiezr. Gideon, son of Joash, had been threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." "Sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you." "But Lord," Gideon replied, "how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family." The Lord said to him, "I will be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting against one man." Gideon replied, "If you're truly going to help me, show me a sign to prove that it really is the Lord speaking to me. Don't go away until I come back and bring my offering to you." And the Lord said, "I will stay here until you return." Gideon hurried home. He cooked a young goat with half a bushel of flour and baked some bread without yeast. Then, carrying the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot, he brought them out and presented them to the angel who was under the oak tree. The angel of God said to him, "Place the meat and the unleavened bread on this rock and pour the broth over it." And Gideon did as he was told. Then the angel of the Lord touched the meat and bread with the staff in his hand, and fire flamed up from the rock and consumed all that he had brought. And the angel of the Lord disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he cried out, "Sovereign Lord, I've seen the angel of the Lord face to face." "It's all right," the Lord replied. "Don't be afraid. You will not die." And Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and named it "The Lord is Peace." The altar remains in Ophrah in the land of the clan of Abiezr to this day. That night the Lord said to Gideon, "Take the second best bull from your father's herd, one that is 7 years old. Pull down your father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole that is standing beside it. Then build an altar to the Lord your God here on this hill, laying the stones carefully. Sacrifice the bull as a burnt offering on the altar, using as fuel the wood of the Asherah pole you cut down." So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord had commanded. But he did it at night because he was afraid of the other members of his father's household and the people of the town. He knew what would happen if they found out who had done it. Early the next morning, the people of the town began to stir, and someone discovered that the altar of Baal had been knocked down and the Asherah pole beside it was gone. In their place, a new altar had been built, and it had the remains of a sacrifice on it. People said to each other, "Who did this?" And after asking around and making a careful search, they learned that it was Gideon, the son of Joash. "Bring out your son," they shouted to Joash. "He must die for destroying the altar of Baal and for cutting down the Asherah pole." But Joash shouted to the mob, "Why are you defending Baal? Will you argue his case? Whoever pleads his case will be put to death by morning. If Baal truly is a god, let him defend himself and destroy the one who knocked down his altar." From then on, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, which means "let Baal defend himself," because he knocked down Baal's altar. Soon afterward, the armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east formed an alliance against Israel, crossed the Jordan, camping in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord took possession of Gideon. He blew a ram's horn as a call to arms, and the men of the clan of Abiezr came to him. He also sent messengers through Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, summoning their warriors, and all of them responded. Then Gideon said to God, "If you truly are going to use me to rescue Israel as you promised, prove it to me this way. I will put some wool on the threshing floor tonight." Oh, this is that story. "If the fleece is wet with dew in the morning, but the ground is dry, I will know you're going to help me rescue Israel as you promised." And it happened just that way. When Gideon got up the next morning, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out a whole bowl full of water. Then Gideon said, "Please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. This time let the fleece remain dry while the ground around it is wet with dew." So that night God did as Gideon asked. The fleece was dry in the morning, and the ground was covered with dew. It is very dark in here today. Okay, that is crazy. How interesting that God chose the least of the clans, right? Like the least of the clan and the least of the person in the clan. That's really interesting. And that this guy was like, "I'm not the person that you want. I'm really not." And yet he still did what God asked him to do. I find that really interesting because doing this, I'm like, not the person to read this. Like, can't pronounce it, don't know anything about it, not the person to do this. But I think that the important thing is that he did it anyway, right? Even scared, he obeyed. And it's crazy that even after all of that, he still said, "I'm not sure. Like, can you give me a sign?" Like, how often do we do that, right? Like, how often are we like, "Okay, I heard you, but are you sure?" Like, I guess I can do that, but do you really want me to? Like, really? And not just once, he did it twice. He was like, maybe that was a fluke, reverse it. Like, who has the guts to do that to God? And yet I think we do it all the time. We just don't realize that we're doing it, Interesting. So that was chapter 6. Here is chapter 7. We interpret. Good morning. 5 brothers and 10 sisters. That's a lot. Yeah, we completely do, right? And sometimes we do things so backwards when we interpret them. Like, he literally said, "If the Lord is with us, why has this happened to us?" But the chapter started, the Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. Like, he's asking the wrong question, right? Like, why did you do this to us? God was with you. He did take you out over and over and over again. And this is like the 4th time they've disobeyed. And he's still saying, "Why did you do this to us?" Sounds like something we do, I think. All right. So Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, got his army up early and went as far as the spring of Harod. The armies of Midian were camped north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many warriors with you. If I let all of you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me they saved themselves by their own strength. Therefore tell the people, whoever is timid or afraid may leave and go home." 22,000 of them went home, leaving only 10,000 who were willing to fight. That's crazy. But the Lord told Gideon, "That's still too many. Bring them down to the spring, and I will sort out who will go with you and who will not." When Gideon took his warriors down to the water, the Lord told him, "Divide the men into 2 groups. In one group, put all those who cup water in their hand and lap it up with their tongue like dogs," meaning like this, right? "In the other group, put all those who kneel down and drink with their mouths in the stream." Only 300 of the men drank from their hands. All the others got down on their knees and drank with their mouths in the stream. The Lord told Gideon, "With these 300 men I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home." So Gideon collected the provisions and ram's horns of all the other warriors and sent them home, but he kept the 300 men with him. Okay, so my children, for some reason, like to turn on a faucet and just drink out of it, and every time I'm like, "Would you guys stop it? That is not how you're supposed to drink. Put some water in your hand." So I think it's really funny that they literally chose people based on that. I would have survived. I'm just saying, I'd be in the army. My kids wouldn't, but I would. Okay. Now the Midianite camp was in the valley just below Gideon. During the night, the Lord said to them, "Get up and go down to the camp, for I have given you victory over them. If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant, Purah. Listen to what the Midianites are saying, and you'll be greatly encouraged. Then you'll be eager to attack." So Gideon took Purah and went down to the outpost of the enemy camp. The armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east had settled in the valley like a swarm of locusts. Their camels were like grains of sand on the seashore, too many to count. Gideon crept up just as a man was telling his friend about a dream. The man said, "I had this dream, and in my dream a loaf of barley bread came tumbling down into the Midianite camp. It hit a tent, turned it over, and knocked it flat." His friend said, "Your dream can mean only one thing. God has given Gideon, the son of Joash, the Israelite, victory over all the armies united with Midian." When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he thanked God. Then he returned to the Israelite camp and shouted, "Get up, for the Lord has given you victory over the Midianites." He divided the 300 men into 3 groups and gave each of them a ram's horn with a clay jar and a torch in it. Then he said to them, "Keep your eyes on me, and when I come to the edge of the camp, do just as I do. As soon as my group blows the ram's horn, those of you on the other sides blow your horns and shout for the Lord and for Gideon." It was just after midnight, after the changing of the guard, when Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the outer edge of the Midianite camp. Suddenly they blew the horn and broke their clay jars. Then all 3 groups blew their horns and broke their jars. They held the blazing torches in their left hand and their horns in their right and shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." That's not what he said to say, but okay. Each man stood in his position around the camp and watched as all the Midianites rushed around in a panic, shouting as they ran. When the 300 Israelites blew their horns, the Lord caused the warriors in the camp to fight against each other with their swords. Those who were not killed fled to places as far away as Beth-shah near Zerah and the border of Abel-meluahah near Tabith. Then Gideon sent for the warriors of Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh, who joined in the chase after fleeing the army of Midian. Gideon also sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down to attack the Midianites. Cut them off at the shallows of the Jordan River and at Beth-barah." And the men of Ephraim did as they were told. They captured Oreb and Zeb, the 2 Midianite generals, killing Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. And they continued to chase the Midianites, and afterwards the Israelites brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon. Cool. Who was by the Jordan. They brought him his head. Good morning. What a time to join in. They brought heads. Okay, so that was chapter 7, and crazy. They blew the horns and the people started fighting each other. Then the people of Ephraim asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us this way? Why didn't you send for us when you first went out to fight the Midianites?" And they argued heatedly with Gideon. But Gideon replied, "What have I done compared to you? Aren't the last grapes of Ephraim's harvest better than the entire crop of my little clan of Abiezer? God gave you victory over Oreb and Zeb, the generals of the Midianite army. What have I done compared to that?" When the men of Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, they were no longer angry. Gideon then crossed the Jordan River with his 300 men, and though they were exhausted, they continued to chase the enemy. When they reached Succoth, Gideon asked the leaders of the town, "Will you please give my warriors some food? And they're very tired. I am chasing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the leaders of Succoth replied, "You haven't caught Zebah and Zalmunna yet. Catch them first, and then we'll feed your warriors." So Gideon said, "After the Lord gives me victory over Zebah and Zalmunna, I will return and tear your flesh with the thorns and briars of the wilderness." From there, Gideon went up to Peniel and asked for food, but he got the same answer. So he said to the people of Peniel, "After I return in victory, I will tear down this tower." They got their tower torn down. The other people got their flesh torn. By this time, Zebah and Zalmunna were in Kakor with a remnant of 15,000 warriors, all that remained of the allied armies of the east. 120,000 were already killed. There was only 15,000 left. Gideon circled around by a caravan route east of Nobah and Jogbrahah, taking the Midianite army by surprise. Zebah and Zalmunna, the 2 Midianite kings, fled, but Gideon chased them down and captured all their warriors. After this, Gideon returned by way of Heres Pass, and there he captured a young man from Succoth and demanded that he write down the names of all the 77 rulers and leaders in the town. Gideon then returned to Succoth and said to the leaders, "Here are Zebah and Zalmunna. When we were here before, you taunted me, saying, 'You haven't caught Zebah and Zalmunna yet. Catch them first, and then we'll feed your exhausted warriors.' So Gideon took the leaders of the town and taught them a lesson, punishing them with thorns and briars from the wilderness. He also knocked down the tower of Peniel and killed all the men in the town." I'm not sure that I want to know, but how do you punish someone with thorns and briars from the wilderness? Like, what does that mean? You're like scratching them? You're like scraping them? Like, how do you punish someone with thorns and briars? Because if I said to my kids, "Well, I'm going to punish you with thorns and briars," I don't know that they'd be that afraid, but it sounds really intimidating. It really does. I don't think we want to know either. Oh, Yeah, maybe. I guess you might whip them. Okay. Yeah, that's not good. That's terrible. Yeah, okay. It is the Bible. We are in Judges chapter 8. And, yuck. Okay. All right. Back to Judges chapter 8. So Gideon asked Zebah and Zalmunna, the men you killed at Tabor, what were they like? Like you, they replied. They all had the look of a king's son. They were my brothers, Gideon exclaimed. As surely as the Lord lives, I wouldn't kill you if you hadn't killed them. Turning to Jether, his oldest son, he said, kill them. But Jether did not draw his sword, for he was only a boy, and he was afraid. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said to Gideon, don't ask a boy to do a man's job, do it yourself. So Gideon killed them both and took the royal ornaments from the necks of their camels. That reminds me of a scene in Game of Thrones where the old guy got his head cut off, and he was like, if you're going to do it yourself. They didn't take any camel ornaments. He took royal ornaments from the necks of their camels. I wonder what those looked like. Or you could make a crown. Yeah, kind of like they did for Jesus. What is my life's mission? I will have to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure. Are you religious? The yuck after confused me. Yes, I am. But we are reading through the Bible, a lot of stories that I have never heard of. And some of them are yuck. Some of them are really yuck. Make them a thorn member and insert. Yeah. No, I'm not a fan of this. That's better than stoning someone, but okay. We are trying to finish chapter 8 because it is very intense. Then the Israelites said to Gideon, be our ruler. You and your son and your grandson will be our rulers, for you rescued us from Midian. But Gideon replied, I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. However, I have one request. Each of you can give me an earring out of the treasures that you collected from your fallen enemies. Because the enemies, being Ishmaelites, all wore gold earrings. Interesting. I'm not going to rule over you, but everybody pass over an earring. Then, gladly they replied, they spread out a cloak, and each one threw in a gold earring he had gathered. The weight of the gold earrings was 43 pounds, not including crescents and pendants, the royal clothing of the kings, or the chains around the necks of their camels. 43 pounds of gold. Yes, please. Gideon made a sacred ephod from the gold and put it in Ophir, his hometown. But soon all the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping it, and it became a trap for Gideon and his family. Okay, let's be real honest. I can't say that I blame them, because I was just like, yes, please. My eyes are 43 pounds of gold. Yes, please. But that's not what you're supposed to do. They prostituted themselves by worshiping the gold. Then Gideon of Joash returned home. He had 70 sons. 70 sons, for he had many wives. He also had a concubine in Shechem who bore him a son named Abimelech. Gideon died when he was very old, and he was buried in the grave of his father Joash at Ophrah in the land of the clan of Abiezer. As soon as Gideon was dead, the Israelites prostituted themselves again by worshiping the images of Baal, making Baal-berith their god. They forgot about the Lord their God, who rescued them from all their enemies. Nor did they show any loyalty for the family of Jerubbaal, which is Gideon, despite all the good that he had done for Israel. These people just do not learn. Make them a bounce house and don't tell them. Make them a thorn dog and tell them to pet the thorn dog. No one told him what caused those children. Seriously, that man did not figure it out anytime soon. 70. Was it 70 or 77? 70. Okay, chapter 9. One day, Gideon's son Abimelech went to Shechem to visit his mother's brothers. He said to them and to the rest of his mother's family, ask the people of Shechem whether they want to be ruled by all 70 of Gideon's sons or by one man. Remember, I am your flesh and blood. So Abimelech's uncle spoke to all the people of Shechem on his behalf, and after listening to their proposal, they decided in favor of Abimelech because he was their relative. They gave him 70 silver coins from the temple of Baal, which he used to hire some soldiers who agreed to follow him. All right. He took the soldiers to his father's home, and there on one stone killed all 70 of it. What? All 70 of his half-brothers. Why would he do that? That guy is serious. He rules over Shechem. Okay, so literally, this guy was like, you want to have all those people or just me? And then he went and killed all of his brothers. Every single one. He took his soldiers that he paid, so he hired contract killers, took his soldiers, and killed all 70 of his half-brothers. But the youngest brother, Jotham, escaped and hid. That's craziness. The people of Shechem and Beth Millo called a meeting under the oak and made Abimelech their king. I think they probably were scared not to. Yeah, 70. He killed 70 of his brothers. How do you sleep at night? Like, honestly, I don't understand. I know that it's a different time, but a different time doesn't mean you can kill 70 of your brothers and be okay with it. When Jotham heard about this, he climbed to the top of Mount Gerizim and shouted, "Listen to me, people of Shechem. Listen to me if you want my God to listen to you. Once upon a time, the trees decided to elect a king. They said to the olive tree, 'Be our king.' But it refused, saying, 'Should I quit producing the olive oil that blesses both God and people, just to wave back and forth over the trees?' I said to the fig tree, 'You be our king.' But the fig tree also refused, saying, 'Should I quit producing my sweet fruit and wave back and forth over the trees?' Then they said to the grapevine, 'You be our king.'" That makes me think of little raisins singing. But the grapevine replied, "Should I quit producing the wine that cheers both God and people just to wave back and forth over the trees?" Then all the trees finally turned to the thorn bush and said, "Come, you be our king." And the thorn bush replied, "If you truly want to make me your king, come and take shelter in my shade. If not, let fire come out from me and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now make sure that you've acted honorably and in good faith by making Abimelech your king, and that you've done right by Gideon and all of his descendants. Have you treated my father with the honor he deserves? He fought for you and risked his life when he rescued you from the Midianites. And now you've revolted against my father and his descendants, killing his 70 sons on one stone. And you have chosen his slave woman's son, Abimelech, to be your king, just because he's your relative. If you've acted honorably and in good faith toward Gideon, then may you find joy in Abimelech, and may he find joy in you. But if you've not acted in good faith, may fire come out from Abimelech and devour the people of Shechem and Beth Millo. May fire come out from the people of Shechem and Beth Millo and devour Abimelech." Then Jotham escaped and lived in Beer, because he was afraid. I would be too. Okay, so I did not realize what they were saying is that Abimelech was the one that he made with a concubine, right? He had a concubine in Shechem who bore him Abimelech. So all those 70 brothers that he killed were his legit brothers. He was the one that was not, and I completely agree with you. Why are the trees talking? I was wondering that too. Like, are the trees really talking, or was this some sort of metaphor? Because he made it sound like the trees were really talking. So unless this is like an Ent situation from Lord of the Rings, I wasn't aware that trees could talk. But it was the fig tree, the olive tree, and the grapevine. They heard it through the grapevine. Okay. So I think that Shechem decides that they don't want Abimelech. So we're almost done with this chapter. Let's keep reading. After Abimelech ruled over Israel for 3 years, God stirred up trouble between Abimelech and the people of Shechem, and they revolted. In the events that followed, God punished Abimelech and the men of Shechem for murdering Gideon's 70 sons. The people of Shechem set an ambush for Abimelech on the hilltops and robbed everyone who passed that way. But someone warned Abimelech about their plot. At that time, Gaal, son of Ebed, moved to Shechem with his brothers and gained the confidence of the people of Shechem. During the annual harvest festival held in the temple of the local god, the wine flowed freely, and everyone began cursing Abimelech. "Who is Abimelech?" Gaal shouted. "He's not a true descendant of Shechem. Why should we be Abimelech's servants? He is merely a son of Gideon, and Zabel is his administrator. Serve the men of Hamor, who are Shechem's true descendants. Why should we serve Abimelech? If I were in charge, I would get rid of Abimelech. I would say to him, 'Get more soldiers and come out and fight.'" But when Zebul, the leader of the city, heard what Gaal was saying, he was furious. He sent messengers to Abimelech and Aruma, telling him, "Gaal, son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to live in Shechem, and now they're inciting the city to rebel against you. Come by night with an army and hide in the field. In the morning, as soon as it's daylight, storm the city. When Gaal and those who are with him come out against you, you can do with them as you wish." Interesting. Oh, okay, so you're saying that it's a parable. All right, well, good to know that the trees are not actually talking. Okay. So Abimelech and his men went by night and split into 4 groups, stationing themselves around Shechem. Gaal was standing at the city gates when Abimelech and his army came out of hiding, and when Gaal saw them, he said to Zebul, "Look, there are people coming down from the hilltops." Zebul replied, "That's just the shadows in the hills that look like men." But again, Gaal said, "No, those are people coming down from the hilltops, and another group is coming down the road past the diviner's oak." Then Zebul turned on him triumphantly. "Now where's that big mouth of yours?" he demanded. "Wasn't it you that said, 'Who is Abimelech, and why should we be his servants?' The men you mocked are right outside the city, so go and fight them." Gaal then led away the men of Shechem into battle against Abimelech, but he was defeated and ran away. Aw, that sucks. I'm so sorry, Gaal. Hopefully he didn't lose his head on a stone like the other 70. So many of Shechem's warriors were killed, and the ground was covered with dead bodies all the way to the city gate. Okay. There were so many warriors killed, the ground was covered with dead bodies. That's terrible. That is not a good word picture. Abimelech stayed in Aruma, and Zebul drove Gale and his brothers out of Shechem. The next day, the people of Shechem went out into the fields to battle, and when Abimelech heard about it, he divided his men into 3 groups and set an ambush in the fields. When Abimelech saw the people coming out of the city, he and his men jumped up from their hiding places and attacked them. Abimelech and his group stormed the city gate to keep the men of Shechem from getting back in, while Abimelech's other 2 groups cut them down in the fields. The battle went on all day before Abimelech finally captured the city. He killed the people, leveled the city, and scattered salt all over the ground. Anybody know why salt? That's very interesting. I've never heard of that ritual before, but he legit threw salt, like a flower girl at a wedding. Scattered salt. When the people who lived in the tower of Shechem heard what happened, they took refuge within the walls of the temple of Baal-berith. Someone reported to Abimelech that people were gathered together in the temple, so he led his forces to Mount Zalmon. He took an axe and chopped some branches from a tree and put them on his shoulder. "Quick, do as I've done," he told his men. So each of them cut some branches, following his example. They piled the branches against the walls of the temple and set them on fire. This man is legit evil. He just set a church on fire. They took refuge within the walls of the temple. He heard they were there, cut down branches, and set them on fire. All the people who lived in the tower of Shechem died, about 1,000 men and women, people who were not fighting him. That is so wrong. Then Abimelech attacked the city of Thebez and captured it. But there was a strong tower inside the city, and the entire population fled to it. Hopefully a fireproof one. They barricaded themselves in and climbed up to the roof of the tower, and Abimelech followed them to attack the tower. As he prepared to fire the entrance, a woman on the roof threw a millstone that landed on his head and crushed his skull. I'm sorry, hold on. Did you hear that? It was a girl. A woman on the roof threw a millstone that landed on his head and crushed his skull. What? He said to his young armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and kill me. Don't let it be said that a woman killed Abimelech." So the young man stabbed him with his sword, and he died. Okay, that sucks. But how did he not die getting hit in the head with a millstone? The young man stabbed him with his sword, and he died. When Abimelech's men saw that he was dead, they disbanded and returned to their homes. Thus God punished Abimelech for the evil he had done against his father by murdering his 70 brothers. God also punished the men of Shechem for all their evil, and the curse of Jotham, son of Gideon, came true. No, we're actually reading Judges. We're reading through the Bible. Time to change the pH of the dirt to make it unfit for growing plants or something. Seriously. Thank you for being here with us. We are not reading Harry Potter. We are reading Judges. We're reading through the entire Bible in a year. Not necessarily so good at doing it every single day, but we're getting there. And some of the stories sound like a crazy show. Either that or the Book of Mormon. We're actually reading a version just called the Book. Sorry, I did not mean to flick you off. We're reading the Bible over here. I used my son's Bible because it was the one that was closest to me, and it's actually written in a very easy to understand way. It doesn't have a whole lot of flowery language, which is pretty good because we're reading all of it, and I am struggling. Guys, I'm not very good at these names. But just like Gideon, I'm going to do what God asked me to do. So here we are. I'm glad that you guys are with me. That was all that we had to read for today. So yay, we did it. And what a crazy story. Yeah. Yuck. There's too many dead bodies. The ground is littered with them. I can't stop making that face. All right. Well, anyway, I hope that you guys have a fantastic Monday. Thank you for being here with us. I'm going to go get some Christmas shopping done while Jack is at the kennel, and I will see you all tomorrow. Hope you have a great day. Bye.